Hello everyone, welcome to a new chess video. Today, I'm bringing you a truly spectacular gambit that you've probably never seen before. It's played with the double king's pawn opening. What does that mean, chess teacher? It means you'll be able to play it in tons of games. Why? Because this right here is the most played opening in the history of chess. Check it out, it starts like this. We played d4, giving away this pawn. What do you mean, giving it away, Chester? It's protected by the queen. Yes, but we're not going to capture it. Instead, we're going to play this move here, f4. Notice that this is a very, very rare gambit. I've been playing it for a month or two, and the results I've gotten will blow your mind. I'm going to explain exactly how to play it, and I'll also show you all the traps you can use in this gambit. So give this video a big like if you enjoy videos like this. And now, let's get started with this awesome gambit. Notice where the problem is here for black. Now, they have an extra pawn, but what's likely to happen is that they'll try to defend it with their pieces, like with knight to c6 or bishop to c5, for example. These are two very natural moves because they develop their pieces while also defending their extra pawn. Let's suppose they play knight to c6, for example. So we're going to keep putting strong pressure on this pawn because that way we force our opponent to defend it with their other piece. If they defend with the bishop first, now when we attack it, they'll have to bring out the knight. And if they defend with the knight first, now when we attack it, they'll have to defend it with the bishop. What does this mean? It means they're going to play these two pieces no matter what, and the order doesn't matter. Now we're going to stop attacking this pawn because it was never our goal, okay? You need to remember that. Our goal isn't to win back this pawn. It's just to put a little pressure on it so our opponent has to defend it with their pieces. We're going to play bishop to d3. And why put the bishop on d3 if it's blocked by the pawn? Well, you're about to see why. Now, what would be a normal developing move for black? For example, knight to f6 comes to mind. In fact, that's the move I've seen played against me the most, right? This traditional setup, developing the pieces, bringing out the knights, defending the pawn with the bishop, is what I faced most often in the games where I've used this. And notice that here we're going to castle. Why? Because they're going to castle too, and at this point they've pretty much already lost the game. How do you feel about that? Well, yes, here's what you need to take away from this. Notice that we have two pawns really well positioned, thanks to having lured away this black pawn. A super important pawn. We've given up a pawn, but what they don't realize is that they're actually worse off than we are, because this pawn is a huge problem for them. So how are we going to continue? Well, now by advancing this pawn, moving our pawns that are now free to move since there's no longer an enemy blockade, attacking this knight, which is the best defender of the castling, and at the same time opening up our bishop, which is slipped in strategically to threaten the opponent's castled king. This knight has to move, and once it does, our Greek sacrifice will come. If you don't know what the Greek sacrifice is, it's bishop takes on h7. It's an attraction sacrifice because we're going to lure the king. We give up the bishop, that's true, but now we bring in all our pieces. We bring in the knight with check, and notice that the king doesn't have any pieces to protect him. He might try to escape, but now we bring in the queen, and checkmate is going to be inevitable. Notice that there's only one way to avoid this checkmate, and that's by giving the king some breathing room by moving the rook. And you have to remember this, it's important. If they try to escape with the rook, you shouldn't go in this way. Instead, you need to capture the pawn on f7. Why? To force the king over here, give another check, and now, look, check, and when he moves, we come in with another check. And when he moves again, we take the pawn with checkmate. Now the king can't escape anymore. Checkmate. This second variation is even better and more fun. Normally they defend this pawn, right? Alright, we're going to play knight to f3, but what happens if they don't play bishop to c5? Because chess teacher, they might play bishop to c5, it's a very natural move, but they could also, for example, play this check here. It's not a very natural move. They give check, this pawn is covering the c3 square, so it's actually a pretty natural move to give this check. How should I continue? Well, we're going to play c3, obviously. Giving up the pawn doesn't matter at all because we want to develop the knight, right? Once this knight is developed, we're in a really good position, and this bishop doesn't really have anything left to do. And in some cases, we can play bishop to d2, jump with the knight over here, attack here, or come to attack some other point around here. That's why many players, and I'm speaking from experience because I've tried it, exchange this bishop for this knight and leave us with this isolated pawn here. You already know that an isolated pawn is a tactical motif, but it's really not a big deal. We're going to continue like this. You already know that if they play knight to f6 here, it's trouble for them, because we always have this advance that will really bother our opponent and also take away the best defender of their kingside. That's why I've found that most of the time they play d6 against me. When they play d6, what should we do? Well, we're just going to keep playing normally. Here, it's important to understand the concept and not just memorize the moves. We keep going the same way, bishop to d3. Now, our opponent has already played d6, they might play knight to f6, but we're going to castle. Absolutely nothing happens. Notice that if they castle, they're in the same situation again. We advance, and no matter how much they trade, we can trade too. This knight moves away, Greek sacrifice, and we're back in the same situation. That's why the opponent can't castle. If they castle, you already know e5. If they don't castle, for example, if they develop their bishop and pin us, we don't care. Why? Because our opponent is left with their king in the center. The great thing about this awesome gambit is, if they castle, it's bad for them. If they leave their king in the center, that's even worse, because we're going to punish that too. e5, we're going to open up the position, their king is in the center, so one way or another, we have to punish them. Here, there are several options. Either move the knight away, or capture with the pawn. Obviously, capturing with the pawn seems much better. Here, we're going to recapture with this pawn here, since the knight can't move for now. So this knight has to move. Where can it go? Well, the most natural move is obviously knight to e5. Let's take a moment to look at the position. Right now, it looks like a very even position where our opponent is up a pawn. But we have absolutely incredible pressure. Why? Take a look. Bishop to c4, we put pressure on the knight with both the bishop and the queen. And not only that, but even if they attack our bishop, it doesn't matter, because now we're putting pressure on this square with the rook and the bishop. And the sacrifice would still come anyway. Boom, another big shot. This bishop is the sacrificing bishop in this gambit. Why can we sacrifice the bishop here? Because now we can deliver this double check with the knight, and not just with the knight, but also with the rook. When there's a double check, they're forced to move the king. And now, no matter how they try to hide, it doesn't matter. Whatever they try to do, we're gonna win. Can we take this bishop? Yes, but all we'd be doing is getting back the piece we're down. Could we give this check over here? Well, it would be an interesting move, yes, but without a doubt, it's not the best one. The right move here is super surprising, and you're going to be amazed. You're going to love it just for this move. Pay attention. If you like chess, this is going to give you goosebumps. Rook to f8, check. Sacrificing the rook. It doesn't matter if they take it with the king. What if they take it with the queen? Pay attention. Let's start by seeing what happens if they take it with the queen. Checkmate is inevitable. Queen to b3, check. And now, no matter if they try to block with the knight here, the knight there, the bishop here, or the queen here, whatever move they make, we're going to capture it with checkmate. Look, this queen and this knight make the perfect duo to deliver checkmate. So if they take this rook with the queen, we would checkmate with queen to b3. But what if, Chesterton, if they take the rook with the king, don't give me that, they get away here, right? Well, no, why not? Because queen to f1 is coming, and we'll checkmate on the next move. If they block here, we take the queen. If they block here, we take, and everything stays the same. And when they move the king, which they'll have to do at some point, if they go here, it's checkmate. And if they go anywhere else, even here, it's also checkmate. I warned you this gambit was dangerous, and pay attention, because it's not over yet. I'm sure some of you, since you're very smart, right? Some of you have probably wondered what happens if, when we play e5, they capture here, we trade, and now they take advantage of the pin and capture this pawn here. Notice that this pawn can be taken. Why? Because now this knight can't recapture thanks to the bishop's pin. So here I present to you the tactical concept of a counterpin. You pin me, I pin you. I'm moving out of your pin, and at the same time, I'm pinning your knight. This wins the game. If they take this pawn, they're going to lose the game on the spot. And let's see why. I'm going to explain it to you. Here, no matter what happens, we're going to take this knight. Look, here the best move black has is to capture this bishop that's left hanging. Now, for the moment, white has a bishop and 2 extra pawns. But what are we going to do now? Well, first of all, we're going to capture this knight. How? With the queen or with the knight? Well, with the knight. You have to pay attention because a lot of you said with the queen, attacking the bishop, and setting up a discovered attack, plus we've gotten the piece back. So what's the only move here that can save black? Well, the only move that seems to save them is to bring the queen here. Why? Because if we trade, they have this move here, they get a tempo to move the bishop away. Thanks. However, here, all we have to do is what? Just capture this bishop right here. Why? Because they can take our queen. Well, when they take our queen, remember the in-between move. First, we capture this knight. Why? Because we capture with check, double their pawns, and now we get the queen back. And with check too. And they have to move the king, right? Anywhere. So here we end up with an extra piece and a completely winning endgame. A move I've seen a lot when playing this gambit is that they try to defend this pawn with c5. Is this a good move? Well, no, it's not a good move. Stockfish says it is, but I'm going to show you that it's actually very easy to play against when they play c5. Please explain to me how to punish this, otherwise they're going to do it to me and I'm going to lose. Relax, damn, I just punched so hard, that hurt. Anyway, now I'm really going to explain it to you. Check this out. First of all, they've weakened. Man, my fist really hurts. Leave a like because I just wrecked my fist for you guys here. Alright, they've weakened this diagonal, which we're going to be able to take advantage of with our bishop. This is a good thing. Remember what I told you. Our goal wasn't to win back this pawn, so we don't care if they defend it. We keep going just the same. Remember the ideas. Ideas, knight to f3, right? Attacking here? No, just calmly developing the knight. They can continue with their knight, for example, knight to c6. You already know that if they play knight to f6, they're still exposed to e5, which is why knight to c6 makes more sense. And that's why now we have to decide where to place our bishop. Here, where we've been putting it all along, or here. Well, in this case, we're going to put it here, on c4. Why? Because of the weakness created by these two pawns. Notice that it's never going to be easy to go after this point, because we can capture it very easily, and that's why they can't defend this diagonal. This bishop on c4 is extremely strong, targeting the f7 square, the weakest point in the position, because it's the only square defended solely by the king. So how can our opponents continue here? Well, by far the most common move is to play d6 to protect against this e5 advance. You already know that if they play knight to f6, we have this advance. I can't repeat it enough because otherwise you won't remember it in your own games. That's why they play d6. We continue by castling. If you've been paying attention to the video, you knew we were going to castle short, right? Perfect. And now, take a look, okay? If they play knight to f6 here, you could punish it in two different ways. The first way, e5, you probably thought of this one, you could punish it like that. You could even punish it using the classic fried liver attack with knight to g5. We attack the f7 square with both the knight and the bishop, and there's no way to stop it thanks to our pawn advance. So if knight to f6 is bad, they might try a different kind of move. For example, amateurs love to pin this knight, and you already know this is a mistake. I'm sure you've already figured out how to punish it because we've talked about it in many videos. If you're loyal followers of the channel, you'll know that bishop takes f7, this sacrifice, would win this bishop. Why? Because when they capture, all we have to do is give this discovered check. Why? Because on the next move, we're going to capture this bishop with a queen. Let's see. Many times in online games, people have tried to get clever with me and thought the following. I'm going to capture your queen, so first I sacrifice mine by taking this knight. And this is a miscalculation. Why? Because simply by capturing the queen, they can't take ours, since we're giving check. So they have to move the king, and we capture this bishop. And look, we have an extra queen and a completely winning position where our opponent can't do anything. Pay attention, Eka. 4 and 5, d4, and now we play f4, the gambit we're looking at in this lesson. Now, he defends the pawn, remember? We're gonna keep putting pressure on him. With the idea of taking it? No, we're just putting on pressure to force his pieces to defend this pawn, which we don't actually want to take at any point. Bishop to d3, remember, now it doesn't go to c4, but to b3. And here, one of the main ideas for black was knight to f6, which lost immediately, right? Because we would castle, they castle, and then the Greek sacrifice and all that, right? d6 is quite a bit more effective for black, but be careful, we keep going the same way. Castle. Notice, our opponent is delaying playing knight to f6, he doesn't want to do it. For example, he comes here to pin this knight, but now with much more success than before, because notice that we do not have the sacrifice on f7 now, since our bishop is on d3. That's why now this bishop really is well placed here, because now we don't have the sacrifice. All right then. Here, we need to understand the position, and the move you're going to make in this case is knight from b to d2 to support this knight here. Why? No matter what they play, like knight to f6, we won't push forward and just play h3. Why? Because if your opponent tries to escape, we're going to capture the bishop. Notice that it has nowhere to go. That's why here, 90% of the time, instead of pulling the bishop back, they capture the knight so they don't waste any time. And here, it's important, remember this, that's why we brought the knight here, to capture with this knight and replace the knight on f3. Now, notice that black doesn't want to stay in the center, because otherwise we'd go for opening up the king. So they castled. But what happens? Even though the position is changed compared to the previous one, the exact same thing would happen. Do you remember or not? Come on, think with me. e5, very good. And now, no matter how much they capture, we're going to recapture and attack this knight here. Where can this knight go? Well, the most natural move is knight to e5. Wherever it goes, they're going to lose. Why? Because we have the Greek sacrifice again. Bishop takes h7, king takes, and now we'd come in with this check. It's true that they're not forced to go back. But look, for example, if they come to h6, they lose the game. With knight takes f7, discovered check with the bishop and check with the knight, they'd have to move the king and they'd lose the queen. That's why they can't come here. If they come forward here, there are two moves that win the game. Queen to d3 check would win the game because now it would basically force the king to come here and the sacrifice would happen again. And the other winning move is queen to g4 because it sets up a discovered attack, and notice there's no way to prevent this king from ending up in checkmate. And remember, if the king moves back, we would play queen to h5 to deliver this brutal checkmate. Remember, if they move the rook away, we're going to capture here, and if not, we'll checkmate here. For example, if they give a discovered check, which is the only thing they can do, we simply move the king to a square where they can't check us anymore, and whatever they do next, we come in with this brutal checkmate. Now, I'm going to show you one final detail you need to know if you want to play this gambit. What's really great about this gambit right here? Well, it's that your attacking plans are pretty much the same in all the lines, and you'll know them while your opponent, I'm sure, won't, because this gambit is really rare. And that's why you're going to win a ton of games. But here, for example, if they play the natural move bishop to e3, you already know how all this works. d6 to prevent e5, also very natural, instead of playing knight to f6. Very good. We castle, and your opponent keeps playing normally but still hasn't castled yet. Notice that here, unlike when this pawn was here and your opponent had already castled, the move was really easy. But here, playing e5 seems a bit premature. So what do we want? We want our opponent to castle. How can we make that happen? Well, for example, with a waiting move like this one, a 3 or h3 would be very interesting moves. But there's one move that will make your opponent castle immediately, and I know this for a fact because I've played several games, and with this move, they've castled every single time. Queen to e1. First, because we put a ton of pressure on this king. And second, because the e5 push is absolutely brutal. We would advance to e5, and after the exchanges, we'd be pinning all of this here. They wouldn't be able to recapture, this knight would be under attack, the pressure is at its maximum. That's why they castle. So what has changed now? Well, the queen has just switched sides, but that's no big deal. e5, pawn takes, this knight has to move, and now it's just the Greek sacrifice. They have to capture, check with the knight, and when they move, instead of coming in here, we come in over here. And you might say, chess teacher, but you told me that when I move the rook, I should capture the f7 pawn, and now I can't. It's no problem because thanks to not having the f-pawn, we give check here, and when they move, we deliver checkmate with the rook. That's why the gambit is still completely effective. I hope you'll love this video. If you did, please give me a big like, leave any comments you want, let me know what you'd like to see, and whether you enjoyed this video or not. Thank you all so much for your support. I loved recording this, as always, and I'll see you in the next video, friends. Goodbye.